here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with Gaza and no signs of a breakthrough in ceasefire talks. Negotiations are continuing, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refuses to compromise on a ceasefire deal that Hamas has agreed to. The U.S. is playing down Israel's control of Gaza's Rafah border crossing. Russian President Vladimir Putin begins his fifth six-year tenure as the country's leader after his inauguration ceremony, which was largely boycotted by the U.S. and most EU nations. President Yoon has reinstated the post of Senior Secretary for Civil Affairs and named former Vice Minister Kim Joo-hyun as a part of efforts to better reflect public sentiment. Negotiations over a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas have reportedly resumed in Cairo. But any deal still seems some way off. Our Kim Bo-kyung leads us this morning.
Calling it far from meeting its demands, Israel has not accepted a ceasefire deal proposed by Egypt and Qatar, which Hamas has agreed to. In a statement on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the latest truce proposal from Hamas was designed to torpedo the entry of Israeli forces into Rafah, which did not happen. While saying it is necessary to put military pressure on Hamas for the return of its own hostages, he firmly stated that Israel would not accept a proposal that endangers its own people's security.
Israel cannot accept a proposal that endangers the security of our citizens and the future of our country. Therefore, I've instructed the labor ranks that went to Cairo continue to stand firm on the conditions necessary for the release of our hostages, continue to stand firm on the essential requirements for guaranteeing Israel's security.
Netanyahu's words come after Hamas declared on Monday evening that it has agreed to a ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Israel have pushed on with their military operations in Rafah, seizing control of the Gaza side of the Rafah border crossing on Tuesday morning. To this, a senior Hamas official warned that if Israel's military operations continue in Rafah, there will be no ceasefire deal.
If the aggression continues, there will be no ceasefire because Israelis are the ones attacking and shooting. This agreement, which the movement agreed to, represents the minimum that responds to the demands of our people and our resistance.
Amid the ongoing fighting between Israel and Hamas, the White House has confirmed that discussions on negotiations have resumed in Cairo, Egypt, and that CIA Director Bill Burns is there. While saying that they should be able to close the remaining gaps, the national security spokesman added that the U.S. will do everything to support the process. In a separate briefing, the White House spokesperson made it clear that Washington does not want to see a major operation taking place in Rafah, and that it wants to see a comprehensive plan from Israel to protect civilians who have sought refuge there. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin was sworn in on Tuesday for his fifth term in office. During his inauguration speech, he emphasized Russia's willingness to hold dialogue with the U.S., but only on equal terms. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Tuesday marked the beginning of another 6 years in office for Russian President Vladimir Putin, with this inauguration ceremony taking place in Moscow. His fifth term in office comes amid fierce criticism from the West amid the prolonged war in Ukraine. During his inauguration speech, Putin expressed willingness to hold talks with the West, but only on equal terms.
Dialogue, including on issues of security and strategic stability, is possible, but not from a position of force, without any arrogance, snobbishness, feeling of one's own exclusiveness, but only as equals, respecting each other's interests.
Putin also stressed that the country's state, public, and political system must remain strong and resistant to any challenges and threats in order to maintain the stable development, unity, and independence of Russia. The Russian leader also vowed to grow Russia into the world's fourth largest economy by 2030. The ambitious goal comes as Putin signed a decree that sets national development goals for 2030 and beyond on the day of his inauguration. In the decree, Putin called for Russia's GDP growth to be above the global average, while increasing research and development costs to 2% of GDP by 2030, raising the ranking of R&D spending compared to economic size to within the world's top 10. Meanwhile, South Korea's ambassador to Russia, Lee Do-hoon, attended the inauguration. A South Korean government official who spoke on the condition of anonymity said that Lee's participation was decided after careful consideration of various pending bilateral issues and the need to manage bilateral relations with Moscow. His visit also came despite the boycott of Western countries amid the protracted war in Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
French President Emmanuel Macron and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met for the second day straight on Tuesday, moving from the French capital to a more informal setting in the Pyrenees Mountains. This followed talks at the Élysée Palace in Paris on Monday. During the Chinese leader's third visit to France to mark the 60th anniversary of relations between China and France. While the 2 days of talks were said to be friendly in nature, reports say, Xi made a few concessions on a number of issues raised by Macron, including Beijing's ties with Moscow on the prolonged war in Ukraine. Next up on Xi's European tour are trips to Serbia and Hungary, with the visit seen as an attempt to split U.S.-led anti-China initiatives in Europe. South Korea's top diplomat will head to Beijing ahead of the summit between the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China that will likely take place later this month here in Seoul. Eyes are now on whether Cho Tae-yul's China visit will be a stepping stone to softening Seoul-Beijing relations. Our foreign affairs correspondent Paeunji reports.
Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul is reportedly set to visit Beijing next week as South Korea seeks to mend relations with China before the country's leaders meet for a trilateral summit in Seoul. South Korean media reported Tuesday that his trip will take place sometime around May 13th. The foreign ministry has yet to confirm but did not deny that his visit will take place soon.
South Korea and China have been communicating closely based on a mutual understanding of the importance of high-level talks. We are in the final stages of talks regarding Minister Cho Tae-yul's visit to China.
This is Cho's first visit to China since he took office in January. It's also the first visit to Beijing by a South Korean foreign minister in more than 6 years. Cho is set to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi and discuss a wide range of bilateral and global matters, including security issues such as asking for China's constructive role in countering North Korea's nuclear missile threats, as well as economic issues. The top diplomat's visit comes ahead of the trilateral summit between the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China that will likely take place later this month in Seoul. Seoul's foreign ministry earlier said South Korea is in final consultations with Beijing and Tokyo to hold the upcoming summit on May 26th and 27th. If it takes place this month, this will be the first time in almost 4.5 years since the meeting last took place in Cheongdo in December 2019. Relations between Seoul and Beijing have been strained over the issue of China forcibly sending back North Korean defectors. Recently, the Chinese government reportedly sent back a large number of escapees to North Korea, with human rights groups in South Korea saying that China repatriated at least 260 of them in late April. All eyes are now on whether Cho's visit to Beijing could help stabilize ties between the two countries. Paeunji, Arirang News.
Satellite imagery shows that North Korea has cleared up the North Korean side of the entrance facilities of the Inter-Korean Liaison Office that it blew up 4 years ago. What's on the North's mind? We're joined by Dr. Bruce Bennett for more. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So the imagery was taken by Planet Labs, and the North did the same for the South Korean side last month. What's on the North's mind?
I think the North is trying to tempt South Korea into offering compromises that would assist the North. We know from what U.S. Ambassador Turner has said, Kim Jong-un appears to be in relatively difficult internal circumstances. And so he's obviously looking for something from the outside, including from South Korea, that would help him strengthen his image within the North.
I see. Well, as my colleague reported just now, South Korean officials are finalizing the foreign minister's first trip to China in more than 6 years, ahead of a summit between the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China, which is expected to take place in mid-May here in Seoul. Now, later in May, Korea's top diplomat will ask China once again to play a constructive role in dealing with North Korea issues. The question is, will Beijing listen this time?
Oh, I think Xi Jinping's answer will be obvious. I think he'll say, you're not giving me credit for everything I've been doing for you. I have been helping you with Kim Jong-un, or things could be more difficult. Look at what Kim announced in December. I tried to tone that down, but I did as much as I can. So I think efforts to get China to do more will be very difficult. It is possible that China will agree to do that. But China has always argued that it doesn't have much leverage on North Korea, and I don't think that argument is going to change in this case.
All right, it's been pretty challenging to persuade China to do something constructive and always in the past few years. Now, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has been long pursuing for a summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, mainly to bring up his approval rating over in Japan. Now, if a summit between the leaders of China and Japan takes place, will Kishida be able to make a convincing argument and ask Beijing for help to make that happen?
Well, he will certainly make that request. Again, China is likely to say, we just don't have much leverage here, so we can't help you very much. But I think we have to remember that this isn't just about Kishida's popularity. The Japanese still think there are Japanese being held captive in North Korea that they're trying to liberate, much as Israel is trying to liberate captives that Hamas is holding. This is a very sensitive issue when your own national countrymen are being held by another country. And so I think Kishida is prepared to make some compromises to get Kim Jong-un to consider that. I'm just not sure that Kim thinks that there's much he has to get out of such of a discussion.
Definitely. That's why it's been so difficult to convince Kim Jong-un to come out and have a summit with Kishida. And now, in the meantime, North Korea this past Sunday slammed the U.S. and other countries for seeking an alternative to the UN monitoring panel that enforced sanctions against Pyongyang after the same panel was unable to be renewed because of Russia's veto. Would an alternative panel be effective enough to keep the regime under control?
Well, we have to remember that the UN panel didn't keep the regime under control. They managed to reduce somewhat the things they were doing by exposing them. But there was many violations of the UN sanctions that still went on with the panel meeting. That said, a replacement panel is very important. If we can get the replacement panel, they can continue reporting on North Korean violations. And while none of that reporting will stop North Korea, it may slow it down a bit, especially if some of the sources of electronic components, funding, so forth, are reported by that panel. That's going to be embarrassing for the outside groups helping North Korea. And so that's an important thing to have continue.
Right, especially when North appears to be caring so much about its image on the global stage. And Russian President Vladimir Putin is visiting China in mid-May for a summit with his counterpart Xi Jinping. How likely is it that Putin will stop by North Korea as well?
I think there's an even chance that he'll try to do that. Let's face it, for Putin, the key issue is, does he have much to gain from it? Is there something North Korea can give him? Are they prepared to announce something that North Korea is going to give him, or he's going to announce something he's going to give North Korea? For example, let's say he announces that he's giving major missile defense or air defense capabilities to North Korea. That would make him look very powerful and make him very pleased that Putin would do that. Best done in person.
Right, especially when the talks include the apparent arms deals between the Russia and North Korea, and possibly taking China into the group circle of friends.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and your insights, as always, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
President Yoon Suk-yeol appointed ex-Vice Justice Minister Kim Joo-hyun as Senior Secretary for Civil Affairs, bringing back the position that he abolished for better communication with the public. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young tells us more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has named a Senior Secretary for Civil Affairs, reviving a post he previously scrapped, in the move to strengthen his communication with the public as he begins his third year in office this week. On Tuesday, Yoon himself announced he had re-established an Office for Civil Affairs, with former prosecutor and Vice Justice Minister Kim Joo-hyun as the head. This comes after the defeat of his ruling People Power Party at the April 10th general election. Yoon said he had failed to reflect the wishes of the public and vowed to reform the way he communicates and runs the country. During his presidential campaign, Yoon had pledged to streamline his administration to exclude a Secretary for Civil Affairs, citing previous misdeeds that occurred under the role, including abuse of power over government bodies and the investigation of citizens. However, the president said on Tuesday he realized that the position had remained throughout successive governments in order to heed public opinion and better inform the management of state affairs.
I think what he would probably do in this context is to use the position as a way to help implement, and also, again, part of this issue of messaging, his domestic policies, and to be a point where this can be coordinated as best as it can be, given the control of the Democratic Party, but as a medium towards which, domestic policies can be sort of pursued in a more comprehensive way.
In another move signaling change, President Yoon will hold a press conference on Thursday morning, according to spokesperson Kim Soo-kyung. A senior official said no questions are off the table. The press conference will aim to address a variety of topics within its roughly 1 hour timeframe, with the spokesperson moderating. Yoon's presser comes 21 months after his last media conference, which was for his 100th day in office. The president also halted his frequent impromptu questions and answers or doorstepping sessions with media after a series of unsavory exchanges with broadcaster NBC. As Yoon takes steps to make his approach to policy more inclusive and open to discussion, Yoon will deliver a video message to Korean citizens from his own office at 10 a.m. before his Thursday presser. He plans to explain how the administration has executed policies over the past 2 years and lay out what he plans to pursue for the next 3 years of his term. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. Starting off in the United States, and some heated exchanges on the 13th day of former U.S. President Donald Trump's hush money trial involving one of the case's central figures, adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Daniels, who alleges she was paid $130,000 US to remain quiet about a sexual encounter with the former president, was on the witness stand and was given a difficult time by the defense, who accused her of extortion. Daniels repeatedly denied the claims, with voices raised during the cross-examination. Earlier, while being questioned by the prosecution, Daniels gave details of the alleged encounter in a Lake Tahoe hotel in 2006, including a reference to the silk pajamas worn by Trump. Trump is facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records as part of a scheme to suppress negative stories that could have influenced his presidential campaign. The trial is set to resume Thursday, when Trump's defense team will continue cross-examining Daniels. Moving over to India, where the world's most populous nation is in the third phase of its 7-phase general election that began on April 19th. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Union Home Minister Amit Shah were among the voters on Tuesday. Voting for the third phase of elections started at 7 a.m. in 93 constituencies spread across 11 states and union territories. But there were reports of sporadic incidents of violence in 4 constituencies. The third phase of the elections for the Lok Sabha, India's lower house, has over 1,300 candidates in the fray, including around 120 women. Multinational tech giant Apple on Tuesday unveiled its latest OLED screens for its high-end iPad Pro models, including the iPad Air and iPad Pro tablets. According to Apple CEO Tim Cook, it marked the biggest day for iPad since its introduction. It's also the first time Apple has released new iPad models since 2022, which is the longest gap between updates since the product was launched in 2011. The iPad Pro, which is Apple's top-of-the-range tablet, will be available in two sizes, an 11-inch model and a 13-inch model, and is reportedly thinner than previous models, measuring only 5.1 millimeters in thickness. And finally, to Canada, where police say a security guard at rapper Drake's Toronto mansion was shot and seriously wounded in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Authorities say shots were fired from a vehicle before suspects fled the scene. It has not been confirmed whether the five-time Grammy Award winner was at home during the incident. Drake and U.S. rapper Lamar have been involved in an escalating war of words, with each releasing tracks dissing the other, but police said the motive behind the shooting, as well as the details of the shooter or the vehicle, are not yet known.
Good morning. Rain continues in certain parts of the country and on Jeju Island. Expect to see rain through the morning, while Jeolladam-do and Jeju Island could see rain into the afternoon. Gwangju and nearby areas, as well as Jeju, will see 5 to 10 millimeters. The rest of South will see less rainfall. After murky and wet skies, things will get much brighter in the south. Meanwhile, it's a sunny but chilly start to the Parents' Day in the capital, but temperatures will rise fast from a breezy morning to the 20s this afternoon, and we should notice temperatures getting closer to the norms as the week goes on. Take good care during the temperature roller coaster. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 7 degrees higher today. Seoul getting up to 21 degrees. Daegu will be as breezy as yesterday, topping out at 19 degrees. Much brighter skies in store with decent air quality nationwide. So a good day to spend some time outdoors in the afternoon if you can, with sun protection items. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions. We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Straight through my heart.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome.
Now, us.
엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.
먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
Your insights, new styles, new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's May 8th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Chung-Hee-sun.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. And also Im Sang-hyuk.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now in Korea, May is the month when we celebrate our love for our families, and there are days designated to celebrate the different members. For instance, May 5th was Children's Day, and today, May 8th, is Parents' Day. So take a look at the screen to find out more about how we celebrate Parents' Day here in South Korea. Every May 8th is Parents' Day in Korea to celebrate and show respect for one's parents. From a young age, Koreans are taught to give red carnations, letters, or gifts, expressing gratitude to their parents.
At school, they even learn how to sing a special song for Parents' Day, which has the lyrics, "What else under the sky is bigger than our parents' love? Their sacrifices are endless."
Speaking on behalf of millennials and Gen Zers who are celebrating Parents' Day, I tried giving my parents small amounts of cash to express my gratitude. Up until when I was in high school, I would buy them red carnations, but after I became a college student, I would either take them to a nice restaurant or give them cash gifts, which they seem to like even more than the flowers I got them. So here in the studio, how about you two? How do you usually celebrate Parents' Day, and what do you usually get your parents?
Yes, so I've been a good son.
Really
to my
now?
parents.
We'll have to
Yes.
ask.
Okay, so I gave them the cash gift. Now, I'm pretty sure that you guys are all familiar with this, but there's like a tissue, like a box, and you put the 50,000 ones in there, and you pull it out, and the string of money just comes out on, and my parents really loved it. So in the past, I really had to like contemplate myself what to give for mother and father on their birthday or on like Parents' Day. But I realized that the cash gift is the most efficient and the most satisfactory gift to both my mothers and father. So they really liked the gift that I gave to them. So I was really happy as well.
I also saw that on social media. It's like you take out a box of tissues when instead of tissues, it's money. And I saw the reaction of parents and they seem to be very happy.
Actually, I want to have the gift myself.
We'll have to become a parent first, I think. Now, what about you, Haesan? How do you usually celebrate Parents' Day?
First of all, happy Parents' Day and congrats Mom and Dad if you're watching this show. You know, it's really difficult to decide what to give to parents because they already have what they need and they can afford it much better than I can. So sadly, I always fail to get them the right thing. But today, anyway, this morning I sent them flowers, especially carnations, and other gifts like healthcare products to show my gratitude. Also, today is my parents' 30th wedding anniversary, so I really had to do something meaningful. Currently, I'm living in Seoul and my parents are in Busan. Technically, we are living far away from each other, so I'm planning to visit them this weekend, which was supposed to be a surprise actually, but they're gonna know now. So I guess I'm gonna be the biggest gift for them.
Aw, that's really nice. And congratulations to your parents' 30th anniversary. Congratulations to Haesun's parents there. Now, in light of Parents' Day, we're gonna be talking about how we usually express our gratitude or vice versa, how they express their gratitude towards their children. So we're gonna be talking about cash gifts. Do you guys usually receive cash gifts from your parents or an allowance, or vice versa? Do you give allowance or cash gifts to your parents?
Yeah, so I give both my mother and father 600,000 Korean won every month.
Wow.
Yes, so and there's two reasons for this. One is because currently I'm living with my parents in my parents' house, and it's a bit embarrassing to say this because I'm a 30-year-old all grown-up man, but it's some kind of like a rental fee that I give them every month. So, and the second reason is because I'm the type of a person who tend to spend way much more than what I earn for that month. So, and one day I realized that if I go on like this, Sang-hyuk, you'll get broke. So I decided to give some portion of my income to my mother and father as a way to save my money. So I think it's an advantage for both of us. So I can save money and my parents will be happy because they get a decent amount of money every month.
Sang-hyuk, I'm actually quite surprised to hear not only did you give them a cash gift like event where you do the tissues, but for you to give them a 600,000 won, that's around like $500 something dollars.
Right.
Every month to your parents, that's really respectable.
Yeah, because my mother gives the meals and I don't have to pay the rental fees like my peers, so it's some sort of expression of generosity to my
Still, that's very plausible there. Now, what about you, Haesan?
Well, I'm pretty embarrassed to say this after Sang-hyuk especially, but actually today was very exceptional occasion for me.
Okay.
Normally, my parents support me financially instead of me giving them cash, even though I have a job. They technically pay almost everything that's essential for me to live, such as my monthly rent, phone bill, insurance, and also public transport costs. And not only that, they sometimes buy me groceries and food too. I do handle some payments like apartment maintenance fees, But still, without my parents' support, I have no idea how I would survive by myself. And I am doing my best to be independent and to become a more responsible daughter so that I can support them one day. But it's taking way more time than I expected right now.
Exactly, Hezon, and I don't want you to be too ashamed because you're not alone here. There is a growing number of millennials and Gen Zers who live with their parents or aren't financially independent yet and receive an allowance. In our previous episodes, we called them kangaroo tribes. They're like baby kangaroos living inside the pouches of their parents. But how common is this kangaroo tribe tradition, or the fact that we, still having a job and being young adults, are living with our parents?
Yes, luckily my case is not exceptional, rather it's kind of common. 8 out of 10 young Koreans are economically relying on their parents these days. According to one piece of research, if you look at the screen, 77% of Koreans in their 20s and 30s stated that they were financially dependent on their parents, just like me. Among these, 43% said that they live with their parents, while 41% mentioned receiving rent or allowance from their parents. And additional 7% said they live with their parents and receive pocket money at the same time. So definitely a lot of millennials and Gen Zers in Korea, just like me, are going through the same situation.
Now, Sang-young, you might not be able to relate to those stats given that you do give your parents a monthly cash gift, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I do give the cash gifts to my parents and allowances every month, but when I was attending college, I too received the allowance from my parents. So and like you mentioned, I think the biggest reason why the youth in their 20s and 30s are still living with their parents is because they lack stable income these days, especially for those who couldn't get a job. Economic independence is way much more difficult. And if you analyze the survey response, most of them said that they usually leave their parents' nest after they get their job. So this shows that the youth are actually willing to become independent, but the social condition is not allowing them to do so. And currently, because we are experiencing economic downturn, and because the rental fees in Seoul and metropolitan area is just too high, the youth have no choice but to live with their parents.
I know, even though we do seem to be earning a stable amount of income, it's not enough to be actually investing or expanding our assets, which is only the reason why we are relying on our parents, though societally it's not what we want, because this trend seems to be quite the contrary to what we would expect in a conservative and heavily Confucius-rooted society in Korea, where it's tradition to think that it's up to the children to be taking care of their elderly. But now, as we're seeing more millennials and Gen Z earning a lot of allowance from their parents, I do think that there's a stark contrast, right?
Right. So as you mentioned, Korea used to show heavily collective society, and family structure was really like living with a big number of family members in the past. So all family members lived together, and even in the 70s and 80s, there were some youth who gave all their income to the mothers and fathers. And it was also considered a social norm to support your parents once they retire. And parents at the time had the belief that their children will also give them the support once they grow old. Now, but recently the trend has definitely reversed, and it's the children's side that is receiving the support from the parents. Even the parents themselves no longer depend on their children and rather struggle to come up with new ways to gather assets after they retire. And this changing trend reflects our current society. Like I've mentioned earlier, the millennials and Gen Zs are facing low economic growth and rising housing price, and the income change has also come to a stalemate for a decade now. And with this trend, it is, like you mentioned, difficult for the youth to gain their assets and invest in something else.
And I think our parents understand that it's up to them to be saving up for their retirement as well. And I think it also has to do with an aging society. The longer we're living, we're realizing the longer we have to work, we also have to save up more for after retirement. Now, Hezon, would you like to add on to this question on what your thoughts are as to seeing a stark contrast between what we would usually think in a Confucius society, children should be serving their parents, but vice versa, even for me too, I still financially rely on my parents.
Yes, as Sang-hyuk mentioned, not only the cultural aspect, economic backgrounds have also changed a lot compared to the past. We, the young Koreans, are confronting so many economic difficulties nowadays as living in an era of low growth, low salaries, but at the same time, high interest rates, high rent. Even getting a job is another big challenge we are facing, and the pandemic made it much harder. In my case, it's been only a year and a half since I graduated from university, which means I just secured a job and began to earn my own money. So there hasn't been enough time for me to save, and my income is not so high at the same time, so I'm not ready to be responsible for my life. Like myself, as achieving financial stability is getting harder, to buy some time for their children who are beginners in society to settle down, many parents decide to economically support their children until the time is right.
Exactly. And to find out whether giving or receiving cash from one's parents is only limited here to South Korea or if it's common in other parts of the world, we asked our global viewers to share their experience. If you take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of them had to say. Let's start with Tasmia. Tasmia said, "My mother never accepts my gifts, so I always put cash in her bag secretly so that she would get surprised and she would never know that I had been giving her the money." That's really sweet. Now, Tears Bell says, "I have not, but I do buy them very valuable items. For example, I'm buying a rose gold pendant for my mother for Mother's Day." Leon said, "I give my parents about 10% of my monthly salary to help them out with household expenses. Also, I give them monetary gifts during special occasions like their birthdays or Mother's and Father's Day so they can treat themselves to something they like." So it's quite fascinating to find out that all of our viewers around the world are actually serving their parents. But to find out what the culture is like in Finland, we're going to include a fellow Gen Z in our talks. Stay tuned for a live interview. We're now going to include Nina Rosted in our talks. Nina is a Finnish Gen Z who will share her experience on how she usually celebrates Parents' Day. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you for having me today.
All right, Nina, it's Parents' Day in Korea, which is why we're shedding light as to how we're expressing our gratitude towards our parents and how they're taking care of us even though we're young adults with a job. So in Finland, is it common for young adults in our generation to receive or give their parents cash gifts? And which of the two are more common?
So I'd say it's more common to give your children money, but regular allowances, like you were talking about giving and getting regular allowances here in Korea, is not as common in Finland once you turn 18, which is the age you become an adult. So after that, giving your children money, it's more about like getting big appliances to your home or like something more expensive. So I say it's very different to Korea.
I see. Now, Hae-sung, would you like to ask the second question?
Okay, Nina, so then why do you think that's the case?
I think it's because we're taught to be very independent from a young age. So even as teenagers, many students will have a summer job to earn their own money to use. And once you go off to college, you will either have a part-time job or even get a student loan and try to sustain your own living by yourself.
Okay, Nina, so do you either want to receive or give cash gifts to your parents from now on?
Well, I've been at the receiving end for quite some time since I'm studying abroad. So from now on, I would like to give gifts to my parents, but necessarily not maybe cash, but maybe buy them like a trip abroad or something nice like that.
And Nina, if I may ask one last question, in light of Parents' Day, is there anything you would like to say to your parents or parents around the world? I think now is the time a lot of millennials and Gen Zers should realize how much they are doing for us, because it's quite fascinating to hear that in Finland as well, it's the parents that are giving their children, though they are adults, allowances. So in light of that, anything that you would like to say to express your gratitude?
Well, we don't celebrate Parents' Day in Finland, but we do have Mother's Day coming up soon. So I would like to especially thank my mother for being a wonderful person, and also my dad, and for always helping me out and, being there for me.
Yeah, and that was a really heartfelt message right there. Thank you so much, Nina. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
And as Nina mentioned, it doesn't have to be cash gifts in order for us to be expressing our thankfulness towards our parents. But are there any other ways that you guys will try opting for in order to do so?
Letter. Definitely a letter. Handwritten letter.
That's really nice.
It doesn't have to be a long one or beautifully elaborated like Shakespeare's piece. Just write down what's on your mind honestly and show your appreciation and admiration. Also, I have one question for you two. When was the last time you hugged your parents?
Actually, when was the last time for you? For me, though, it was quite recent. During last weekend, we had our Parents' Day dinner, and that's when I hugged my parents, both of them. And it was a really nice occasion because it's been like almost months since I've hugged them. What about you?
Years ago.
Years ago? Okay.
Sorry, Mom.
You're the best son when it comes to giving gifts, but no touchy-feely?
Yeah, actually, after hearing what Hyesun said, I should give something more caring instead of money from now on.
Yeah, give them a hug or a handshake or a little peck on the cheek.
Yes, same here. I also don't remember when was the last time I hugged them. But better late than never, guys. May 8th, Parents' Day, is such a beautiful day to express your emotions to your parents. Hope everyone enjoys today full of love and happiness.
So you're going to be writing them a handwritten letter, right?
Oh, yeah, like Shakespeare.
I think you should because it's also their 30th anniversary and they're watching today. So hopefully after the episode, Haesun's parents could tell us whether she actually did that. Now, what about you, Sang-yeol?
Yeah, so if you are living away from your parents, then I recommend giving a phone call would also make their hearts move. Then not only in Parents' Day, but you should also regularly call your parents and talk with them and say what you're up to these days. Because it's the universal fact, your parents are just always concerned about what you do. And there's the famous saying that no matter how you get old, you will always be the baby of your mother.
Yeah.
So today, if any of you who are watching this show, grab a phone and call your mother and say hello.
Yeah.
And so whether that's good news or bad news, they will really be happy to hear you.
It's all the small things that count. And I think on News Generation, I think one of the light that we should be thinking about is we're about to be parents one day if we want to get married and have kids. So hopefully this day is giving us a chance to really think beforehand on what we want to do. And expressing gratitude doesn't have to be fancy. You can it doesn't have to be cash gifts or even a letter. It could just be a phone call or maybe a hug. I think that's a great idea.
Or just saying I love you.
Or just saying I love you.
Very simple.
Exactly. Expressing yourself comes down. Now, special thanks to Jung Hae-sun today and Im Sang-yeok. And today is actually my last day on News Generation, and having been able to cast a new light on our news channel, especially from the perspective of those in their 20s and 30s, has definitely been a rewarding challenge. So thank you for joining me and our panelists live every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time. From tomorrow, my colleague Song Yoo-jin will be bringing you more topics young people are talking about. As for me, I would like to end off by saying thank you for tuning in every day and helping us make news for the new generation. We are News Generation.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's lying? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Korea, Some people call it the country of Taekwondo. People are more interested in Korean culture and other aspects of it, and one of those things is Taekwondo.
Surtout, ne commencez jamais le taekwondo, parce que si jamais un jour vous commencez, vous ne pourrez jamais vous arrêter d'en faire.
아, 정말 이렇게 제 인생을 좌우할지는 정말 몰랐어요. 왜냐하면 태권도의 나라, 한국에서 태권도를 하고 싶어서 한국에 처음 왔는데 지금은 13년째 살고 있습니다. 태권도 이런 무술입니다.
저는 사실 한 달만 하고 포기할 줄 알았어요. 근데 너무 재밌어요.
What I really like about Taekwondo is that it doesn't only give you the physical abilities, such as like flexibility or strength, it also gives you the mental abilities.
I love the spirit of Taekwondo. It's great martial arts with a lot of respect, a lot of values. Also with the pumse, very beautiful techniques. It's a sport that you can, it's a martial art that you can practice from 7 to old age.
I've never seen them be so committed to anything if they've played other sports, but nothing like this before.
Especially when like two very little kids are fighting, because it's really fun to watch.
So it's a great way for all of us to do this together.
I'm gonna keep doing Taekwondo until this becomes a black belt.
We deliver stories on site. From Korea to the world, and from the world to Korea. We ask questions every day that could change the world. Taking news a step further, Arirang News. You're watching Arirang News. You're watching Arirang.
플라스틱 사실 편리하잖아요. 저조차도 활동을 하고 있지만 플라스틱을 사용할 정도로 생활에 많이 있다고 생각을 하는데요. 플라스틱을 대체할 수 있는 걸 계속